Okay, let me share my screen again, and then you're going to see a Mentimeter question, and afterwards I'm going to go have a little presentation again. Okay, let me maybe get started with answering some of the questions while you still have an opportunity to write some more if you want. And a lot of the stuff I will cover in the following as well. In terms of words, does it include the references? Probably not, but the words count is 1,500 to 2,000 words, and probably you won't have that many references in it anyway, which sort of covers another question about extra references in it. So the way I thought about this assignment, it's really for you to understand what we did, but then also transfer it, like apply that knowledge. And you see a lot of those questions are where I ask you to come up with a similar design as in Kaiser, for example, right? And so this is something where you need to think, where you need to come up with something. And so it's maybe less like in another essay where you cite lots of other people. For me, it's most important that I see that you understand it and that you can apply the knowledge and that you can transfer it. So that's sort of like the thing. How do you get an A? Well, everybody can get an A, first of all. Everybody can get an A, and I get to it in a second. Basically, what you will see is that I have a very structured rubric already about how I'm going to grade this. So all 3 assignments will be weighted equally, which kind of feeds into another point about the word count. So it probably is a good idea to split the word count evenly between the different questions. And then for each one of those sub-questions, there are like 12 subtasks, I have a fixed number of points in mind that you get when you do certain kind of things, right? And I walk you through that in a second. But the best way to lose points and to fail this assignment is when you don't answer all of the 12 tasks. So because if you don't write something to something, I cannot give you points. I can't make it up. I want to give you points. I want to give everybody an A, but I can only give you the points for what you wrote. I cannot give you points for stuff that you didn't write. So really make sure that you really respond to each of the 12, first of all, to all 3 assignments, and then to each one of those subtasks, to those 12 subtasks. Sometimes students even have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that it's actually clear where there is one which refers to what, but sometimes people don't, but either way, I have that in my mind. So for each one of those 12 subpoints, you can gain points. But if you don't write something about that, so for example, in the first one, I talk about lateral support. So if you don't write anything about lateral support, I cannot give you points for it. So that's sort of like one important thing. What I want to note while writing the assignment, I get back to that in a second. Dividing the word count probably is a good idea. Should be reference lecture outside of the course in answering questions for the assignment. Well, you can if you want to, but as I said, that's not the main point of this assignment. The main point of the assignment is for me to see that you understood it and that you can make sense of it, that you can transfer it and apply it. If you have some additional references that you want to add in there, be my guest. It's always good, it's always great, but it's not the expectations. Back up our points, or it is more self-reflection on the material already learned. So I hope I answered that. Are each of the parts to be written in Q&A format, or can we write short essays for each of them? It's really up to you. You can, sometimes people prefer to write one long thing for each of the 3 assignments, right? That's good too. Others want to stick to the numbering. The numbering can help you to really force yourself to write something on everything, right? So in that regard, it might be a good thing when you work on the assignment. And then you can turn that into a more essay style, because there will be some points for quality of writing and style as well. I come back to that in a second. But only do that after you kind of make sure that you have some content for each one of the 12 points. That should be really important. Should we cite? Well, when you cite, then do it correctly. Yeah. So for example, there's, I don't know, assignment 2 about broken window theory. Yeah, of course, it could be a good idea to at least cite the Kaiser paper. When you say, okay, I'm kind of referring to that, similar similar design like that, or maybe like the Koichnik and Wolbring paper, you cite it, but then cite it correctly. I'm also looking for that proper citation style. Which one, I don't really care at the end of the day, as long as it's proper. Does the assignment need to be submitted in the same Word file as the instructions? Can our respondents a PDF created using native? Absolutely. Yeah, submit it. You can submit it separately. I have the assignment myself, so you don't need to repeat that. PDF is absolutely fine. LaTeX is absolutely fine. Word file is absolutely fine. Make sure when you submit it, that it actually is submitted. We don't want to have technical failures about things. Lenient grading, well, basically at the end of the day, my point of view is really, I would want to give everybody an A if I can, but I can only do that when you write something about the different points. But in theory, everybody can get an A, and if you kind of write something on each of the points, and tick the boxes that I have, and give me something. So in doubt, sometimes students make that mistake that they just give me a word or one sentence on something. But then how can I get the points out of that? It's really hard to justify that. Okay, so I'm back. Can you hear me? You can hear me now, yeah? Okay, sorry guys, my internet connection is a bit patchy here. I am in the middle of nowhere. I'm happy that I actually do have an internet connection. Believe it or not, last weekend I was on the roof of this house trying to install a bloody antenna to get a slightly better signal. But even that is tricky. So you can see me again, right? You can hear me again. Okay. Thumbs up, something. Okay. Negative marks. So I'm just going to continue now, assuming that you guys can hear me. Negative marks. No, there are no negative marks. I don't know, worst case, you have 0 points, but you need to pass a certain threshold of points to actually pass. For assignment 2, I was thinking of doing for my study to be the effective people. Okay, this is very specific. I don't know, I can't really give you an answer about this here right now. Think about it through. Broken window theory, mixed up classes. There we go. Well, do your best. What is lateral support? Well, lateral support, check out the lecture on explanations. Check out the reading from Jon Elster. Read that. There you find it. There you find what lateral support is. So look into the reading of Jon Elster. He says there are 3 kinds of supports. There's support from the side, that is lateral support. There's support from below, and there's support from above. And support from above would be theory. Support from below would be like, I don't know, check the reading in detail. The lecture is a while back. I would have to check it. It's really, lateral support is showing what else would have to be true if your explanation is true, and how can you refute your alternative hypothesis, right? So it was this idea, remember, we had the Broadway standing ovations, and lateral support would be, we have the alternative explanations. Let's say it's about the audience, or it is about, I don't know, the quality of the shows, and then lateral support would show how can we refute those alternatives. Not to say that you do refute them, but outlining how can you refute that. That's what I want to see in there. But I get back to that in a second when I walk you through all of the assignments. Specific reference style, no, not really, whatever, as long as you are coherent, as long as it makes sense, as long as it's sort of accepted. Use APA or Harvard, I don't really care, or Chicago. One of the citation styles that you are comfortable with. In assignment 2, question 4, provide a mechanism. Should this be a mechanism we have already learned about? Can you explain? Let me just think, assignment 2, that's the broken window assignment. That's the individual characteristic that matters. And then I want you to, no, it's not really something that you learned already. It could be, what is a mechanism? A mechanism at the end of the day is where you kind of give me a story, an idea, a plausible way about why something should matter and how it would matter. So in this thing, I don't know, you could come up saying, okay, maybe gender matters as an example. Now that would be an individual characteristic, but then I want you not just say, okay, gender matters for how people behave in the order and in the disorder condition, but then I want you here to give me a rationale, an idea about why should gender matter. Yeah, and then in a certain way, a mechanism is sometimes a speculation. That's what it is. You know, it's a plausible speculation about why something would matter. And this is first of all about, yeah, it making sense and being plausible, and less so about drawing another theories and so on. You know, that would be like the support from the above that comes later on in a way. First of all, it is essentially a story about why a particular characteristic that you chose that should matter for how people behave in the order and the disorder condition, about how and why that characteristic would matter. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let me stop here with a question, but always feel free to shoot another question out if you want to, you know, just say something. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back through my presentation, and I'm going to walk you through some stuff that I brought that I thought was interesting for this. Let me just check one thing, that the recording is actually on. Yeah, it is on, because this might be important for other people. Okay, so the procedure for the assignment, as you hopefully all seen, you know, complete the assignment and all 12 subtasks in it. So I cannot emphasize this enough. That's really, I hate it when it happens, because that means, like, you know, I might have to fail somebody, you know, just simply because you might not have completed all the subtasks in a way. And that's why I keep repeating it, that nobody makes that mistake, which sadly does happen, I don't know, once every 2 years. But hopefully it won't. So you have to do all of the 12 subtasks. There's no choice. You go through all of them, you complete all of them. You write your name on it, your student number on it, you save it as Word or PDF, you know, and you submit it via Brightspace assessment assignment by the 18th of December, the latest. Okay, so much about the procedure. This is where you find it. So when you go on Brightspace and assessment and click on assignments, then you find this. You know, there you also see the assignment again. If you haven't, well, if you can't see it anymore, but right, everybody here probably saw it by now. I also attached it to the chat. And here you find the actual assignment. And when you click on the final assignment thing, the blue highlight one, you end up with this page. Then you get some more instructions about when to submit it. And there you can upload a file here at the bottom. And then finally, you can submit it. Yeah. So hopefully it's all straightforward about how it goes. This is how the assignment looks like. Now this is like now the overview page. And then you see there are some instructions, but then there are also the 3 assignments with the 12 subpoints that you have to do, and you do all of them. Okay, so yeah, I keep repeating myself a little bit, but I really want to hammer this point home because it's really important that you complete all 12 subtasks, because I just, if you only complete one, I can only give you points for 33% of the overall thing, and then it becomes really difficult to pass, you know. So complete all of the 3 assignments, all 12 subtasks in it. Okay, yeah. Deadline 18th of December. On an earlier page I had 6 p.m., but let's be honest, the truth is, I don't know, it's midnight. So 18th December, and my Christmas present is going to be for myself to read all your assignments. So this is what I'm going to do this Christmas. Anyway, so 18th of December, 2020, that's the latest deadline. Make sure that you kind of time it with other assignments that you guys might have. Don't underestimate it. You know, make sure that you have a plan where you have to submit what. Now you have around 3 weeks times for this assignment. I don't think it needs that much time. You know, it's all stuff. If you kind of stayed on top of the lectures, you did the readings, you could do that very easily in less than an afternoon. Maybe, I don't know, 2 hours. I don't know. It really depends on how you work, but there should be plenty of time. But 18th of December is the latest deadline for this. Okay, do we have any questions about this so far in terms of the procedural aspects? No, everybody happy? Yeah, makes sense. Okay, well, if something comes up, feel free to, I don't know, we still have half an hour. What I'm going to do now I'm going to jump into the actual assignments, and I'm going to give you some ideas and some tips about the questions and what I'm actually looking for, which hopefully then gives you also an idea about how I am going to grade this whole thing. That kind of also helps you if you understand what is important for me, or how do I go about that. So let me go back and share my screen again. Okay, here we are. Let's jump into the actual assignment. So, well, as I already said, this assignment makes up for 80% of your overall grade. The other 20% are split up in the take-home tests that all of you completed already. And these 80%, I make it easy for myself and for you as well. I kind of translate that into points. That means in this assignment, you can get 80 points at maximum. Now that's the maximum that you can get. And I give 20 points for each of the 3 assignments. So they are weighted equally. But then I also give 20 points for overall writing and quality. This is sort of like where something is really, I don't know, particularly well written, there might be more points. I don't know. Sometimes if something really blows me away, I might even give a bonus point here or there. But this is sort of like for you to understand about where the points come from for these assignments. So also make sure that you write something on each of the assignments, that you don't run out of time, or that you don't drop one of the assignments, because at the end of the day, they all count equal weights. This is ultimately what I do. Ultimately, I produce an Excel file from where I really have like split up for the first assignment, subtask 1.3 or something, and I know, okay, you can get up to 10 points for that, or maybe for another subtask, you can get up to that many points for that. And then I assign each one of you for each one of those subtasks points. And that's how it adds up for the overall thing at the end of the day. And that's then the basis for me to translate it into a grade at the end of the day. But there you can already tell, like if you don't write something on A13, you will get 0 point on A13, on the third task of the first assignment, for example. So that's what I meant by make sure that you really write something to each one of the subtasks. Okay, so well, obviously English write adequately, that feeds into it as well, and also write in a way. Well, we don't have that problem right now, but sometimes I have that problem that I can't decipher it. I cannot read it, with handwritten assignments. In a way, doing the things online makes it easier in that regard. So I don't have to decipher that, because again, I don't know, maybe just as an advice for some other exams that you might have at some point in your life. If you write it in a way that people cannot read it, then the people, as much as they would want to, they cannot give you points for it, because they don't understand it. They cannot read it in a way. And so this is sort of, I want to give you points, but you need to make it easy for me as well. So write something to each of the ones, to each of the points that actually makes sense and refers to the subtask. Sometimes I had it that people just write random sentences to a subtask, and then then I can't give any points because it doesn't answer the question. So answer the question that you are asked to do. Okay, so let me jump into the 3 different assignments, and maybe this gives you a feeling about how I think about it as well. So in the first assignment, it's all about an explanation. It's all about John Elster. So read John Elster again. It would make a lot of sense if I don't know, if not everything is there, or watch the lecture on explanations on it. So I ask you to find one best possible explanation of these 4 things. So in the first part, what am I looking here for? So I ask you to choose one puzzle provided by Elster on these 5 pages, and then come up with your best possible explanation. So I'm looking here for things like this. Like, is there a description of the puzzle? Because sometimes people just give something, but they don't really describe the puzzle. They just write gold medals of India. Yeah? But what do I do with that? You know, that's not, doesn't make, if I would not have given that lecture, I wouldn't know what that means. So write it in a way so that people get it, you know, describe it. Is there a description of this puzzle? Is there a proper explanation? So is that explanation, is there a proper explanation? Is there an understanding of explanans and explanandum? That was really this thing. We have something that we want to explain, and we use something that we use to explain it. You know, like that's like this explanation schema that we have. That's explanans and explanandum. Does the explanation make sense? And does it explain the puzzle? You know, it seems straightforward, but you know, these things are important. Is it an explanation that works? Yeah, and that doesn't mean that you I don't know, there's a right or wrong explanation. Like with a lot of these things, there's not a right or wrong thing. It's more like, how do you make that point? Yeah, how do you present that explanation? Is it a plausible explanation? Would it make sense? I might not agree. I might have a different opinion. I might think, well, maybe something else is a little more plausible. But do you give me a good argument for that? Does it make sense, basically? Then is there a proper description of the explanation in such a way that the mechanism is clear in how the explanandum follows from the explanans? Okay, so like, how do we get from the one to the other? Yeah, that's the difference to the Hempel-Oppenheim schema, where we just have the covering law, we just have the explanandum and the explanans. But now it's sort of like, is there a mechanism about how we get from the one to the other? Why is it the case that India gets fewer gold medals than Ireland, for example? Yeah, what is the mechanism? What is the story? Yeah, and mechanism, as I said earlier, can be speculation. Yeah, it's really giving a story. It's giving a plausible story about how we get from the one to the other. Okay, so the second point here, I have give at least two alternative explanations. So the very first thing when I grade something like that is I check, are there actually two alternative explanations? Sometimes people only give me one, right? And then I can only give you half of the points for that because I asked for two alternative explanations. But then also, are they proper alternative explanations in the sense that they make sense and they also explain the puzzle? Because you guys, I'm sorry, I think you lost me again. Can you see me again? Yeah, okay. This is the stuff that I'm fighting with. I don't even have a fucking internet connection probably. Anyway, let's get back to this. Okay, so here we are. So are there at least two alternative explanations? Is there a proper description of the explanation in such a way that the mechanisms are clear in how the explanandum follows from the explanans for each one of the alternatives? So again, it's like, are there proper two explanations, and are they outlined in the same way that we know how we get from what we used to explain something to what we want to explain? Then I go further on, discuss how one could obtain lateral support for your explanation. Okay, so there, I actually checking, you know, like, do you understand what is lateral support? How do you find that out? You know, check the lecture on explanations. There I talk about it. Look into the reading of Elster. It's basically support from the side. Support from their side that shows how the how one could obtain lateral support. So I'm not asking you to provide lateral support. I'm asking you about how you could provide lateral support. And that means, how could you essentially disprove your alternative explanations? That's what it is. How could we find out that it's not the alternative explanations? In which circumstances, or what would we have to look for to gain confidence in the fact that it's not the alternative explanation as that explains the puzzle? Yeah, so there we are. What else would have to be true if the alternative explanations would be true? In which situations can we find that out? So that doesn't mean that you have to show like what would be wrong. You could also show like what else would have to be true if the alternative explanation would be true. And so it's really thinking about the alternatives and then thinking about, okay, what else would have to be true or not have to be true for the alternatives that wouldn't be the case for the main explanation. And then you can distinguish the main explanation from the alternatives. That's how it goes. Okay, lastly, provide support from above based on literature. So support from above, that was the third support. Yeah, I remember we had the example of the Broadway shows. People feel, I don't know, they spend a lot of money, and in order to make themselves feel better, they tell themselves that it was a great show. And then as it turns out, the theory of cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger, actually says exactly that in a very general way, that could be applied here. So that's what I ask you to do here. And that it could be Festinger if it makes sense for your puzzle. It could be another support. So this is where you probably would draw on literature from elsewhere, something that you read or where you kind of can see, but how you can make a point for your explanation, for your main explanation. So is there a more general theoretical argument? And a more general theoretical argument is always like, it's a bit zooming out. That's what it is. You are very particular, very specific about something. And then the more you zoom out, then this is what your theory is. A theory is like a zoomed out version of an idea about what happens in the world. And then the Broadway shows is a particular application of that, you see? So the theory of cognitivism is a general theoretical argument, for example, about what goes on in people's brains. That's just one argument. You could make another theoretical argument, but that argument can explain why people stand up in the Broadway shows. You see, that's the distinction between the general thing, which is the theoretical argument, and the specific explanation that you have. And here I want you to make that leap. I want you to kind of have that eagle's eyes view on it with a theoretical understanding of something that would explain your explanation. And is the theory relevant for the explanation? Does the presented theory support the main explanation? Is there proper citation and referencing on this? Okay. So much about the first assignment. Do you have any questions on that so far? No, I can't see you, so you need to shout. This is helpful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The question 3. Mm-hmm. So do we have to, you said that it's just how we could do it. So we don't actually do it, but we are talking about our 2 alternative explanation, are we?
Exactly. Okay. That's what you do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because you couldn't, think about it. You cannot block the bridge from New Jersey to New York. You cannot do that. I don't ask you to do that. Yeah. But in our thoughts, we can. Yeah. And this would be like a way about how we could actually delineate our main explanation from the alternative. Okay, let me go on because I want to get through all of it. So in assignment 2, it is about broken window theory. So, we have 2 lectures on that. The main reading is the one by Kaiser et al., 2008. And in the first part, or in part 5 here, subtask 5, I ask you to think about one new study design, similar to the ones presented in Kaiser et al. Or Keuschnig and Waldbrink. I remember these were the different kind of things with putting flyers to the bikes or I don't know, whatever they did, putting rubbish sacks next to the traffic light, for example. I want you to come up with one new design, similar to those, for how we could study the spreading of disorder. And then describe your own design clearly. And again, note that this does not mean that you should actually perform the study, but instead describe how you would go about doing it. So is there one proper new study design? Is it a valid design to study the broken windows theory? Is the design presented in such a way so that one understands it and that one could actually conduct the study? So ideally, I would actually get great ideas for conducting new pieces of research, and that's sort of like how I work. If you have some great idea, then I don't know, let's sit down and let's do the thing. Let's do it afterwards. But here I want you to come up with a new study design. And this could be anything, but it needs to be new. Okay, and then outline what the disorder and order conditions in your study design would be. So again, be very clear, what is the treatment? This is sort of where we do something. This is like an experimental design. That's what all of these things are in Kaiser and in Keuschnig. They're all experimental design. So I want you to do that as well. And be very clear about what is your disorder condition and what is your order condition. And then in the next part, I talk about individual level characteristics. This is again where moving the research frontier. There's not much out there, actually. There isn't, but I think it's a fascinating field of research, and I want you to think about it. How could we do it? What kind of characteristics could matter? As I said earlier, for example, gender could matter. We talk about that as being a moderator. It moderates the effect of the treatment on the outcome. Where I don't know, being in the order condition or in the disorder condition works differently for one group than for another group. in a way. That's sort of like what we call an interaction effect, but don't be put off by that. It really is very similar to the study that I presented you, where we looked at individual quality of bikes and showed that that actually matters for how people react in the order and in the disorder condition, and whether they throw flyers onto the floor. So I want you to think along these similar lines. And then lastly here, I ask you to provide a mechanism for why this individual characteristics should matter in your case. Again, like give me a rationale. Yeah, don't just say gender matters, but give me an explanation for why should we think that gender justify it? Yeah, give a bit of a story around it about how it could work, or why, I don't know, men and women might react differently, or why different age groups might react differently, and so on. And again, this is sort of like a mechanism is giving a plausible story. That's what I want you to do here. Okay, do we have any questions on the second assignment? No, everybody good? I don't see your faces, so. Okay, in this case, let me move on to the third assignment. The third assignment. Third assignment is about the friendship paradox. Now, it's this weird phenomenon that the randomly selected friend of a random person is not random anymore. It's really odd. And check the video for it, you know, the friendship paradox video that I uploaded last week. Also, the reading of Feld is interesting. I also wrote another paper about that, which could be interesting. So in the first part, I asked you, how does the friendship paradox come about? Explain why generally the random friend of a random person is not random anymore. So what am I looking here for? Basically, first of all, is there a correct understanding of the friendship paradox? Yeah. Can I, based on what you've written, can I see that you understood the friendship paradox? If you're still unsure about it, don't worry about it. Just look it up. You know, you can do that. Do the reading, watch the videos. You know, it's not rocket science. Yeah, you find it out. It's really about this thing that, you know, the people who have many connections, lots of people are connected to them. So lots of people see, if we kind of now think for a moment that kind of networks are also the channels for how information spreads or how we see the world, then lots of people see that person who has 1,000 friends because that person is in many friendship relationships, right? So then if you kind of ask people about how many friends their friends have, that person with 1,000 relationships gets counted 1,000 times, while that person who has only 5 relationships is only seen by 5 people to have 5 friends. And that's the thing which is sometimes hard for us to grasp, because we only see the world through our eyes and we don't see what we don't see. So and this is sampling bias, you know, but here in network terms, it's called the friendship paradox, which is fascinating once you kind of think about it a little more. So is there a correct understanding of it? Is the explanation that is given for why the random friend or random person is not random in line with the friendship paradox? Because some people might just ramble about something like that, you know, then I don't give, it needs to be relevant for in line with the friendship paradox. And does the explanation make sense? Yeah, is it basically coherent, and does it make sense? Okay, in the 10th task, I asked you, can you think of a scenario where this statement is not true anymore? This might be a very unrealistic hypothetical case about how a social network looks like. So here you need to step back a little bit. This is might be a bit of a tricky question, but what I'm checking in here is, did you really understand the friendship paradox? Because you need to understand the friendship paradox to answer this question. And then I'm saying, you know, think of a scenario where this might not, because before I said, well, this is a very general phenomena, but now I'm saying, can you think of a scenario where it is not true? And actually there are scenarios, you know, if you think about what kind of is driving the thing, and what is driving the thing is really that some people have lots of friends and others don't really have that many friends, right? So can you think of a hypothetical case about how a social network can look like? And this can be very artificial. And you can say, I don't know, this is how the network looks like, or you could even draw it, I don't know, whatever you feel like, where the friendship paradox would not hold anymore. And then is there a proper description for why that is the case? So again, I want to check, did you understand the friendship paradox? And then in consequence, do you understand why in this particular case, which might be very artificial, a very hypothetical network structure, why, in this case, it would not hold. And the friendship paradox is a very universal phenomenon. Can you think of implications that follow from it for social life? Outline one unintended consequence of the friendship paradox. So I really want you to think a little further in what does this friendship paradox mean? And it's a bit like in the second assignment, this is all research frontier, really. And, I love the friendship paradox. I think it's fascinating. I do research on it, but not that many people do. And that really strikes me because I think, hang on, this must have real world implications. If it is the case that we do experience the world in a biased way, or that we kind of think that others have more friends, what does that mean? Yeah? What does that mean? What are the implications of that? And where would we detect that? And what could we do about it? Or I don't know, it might not always be a bad thing, but that might be a good thing. Maybe this is a good way of increasing cooperation in the world. Now, if you think about it, that the people who are nice, they have more connections. That means like you engage more with nice people in a way that because they are seen more and, they have more relationships because they are nice. And because of that, actually people end up being nicer than they actually are, because you engage with nicer people. And then maybe there's something about, I don't know, generalized exchange or reciprocity. If you are nice to me, then I'm nice to you. I don't know, something like that, where I want you to think further. And this really is where you need to step out and understand the friendship paradox and think it one step further. You won't find much in the literature about that because people haven't really written about that. But I think people should write about that. And so the assignment is the first starting point for that. Okay. And lastly, can we use the friendship paradox to do something good? And if so, how? Again, like if it is the case that it's fascinating, we don't need to know about the network, but as long as I randomly pick a person, I randomly walk in the direction, I have higher chances to be connected with a highly connected person. And that's fascinating. That means like you could actually really do something good. For example, a vaccination program. Like, I don't know, instead of randomly vaccinating people, I randomly vaccinate a random friend of a random person. And why would that be better? Well, because of the friendship paradox. For example, right? This is sort of how I want you to think. Check out the reading by Krustakis and Fowler. They wrote about that. I think I have another paper about that by Kim, I don't know the reference by now, but I think I have it in the extended reading list. Paper studied published in The Lancet, which goes in a similar direction. But there, again, I want you to think about, okay, if this friendship paradox is there, what could we actually do out of it and how could we do something good? Okay, so I hope that makes clear. I have a little bit of, but I don't know, it's really about what is an A, but you got it now a little more about what I mean. So let me stop sharing my screen and open it up again for questions if you have any. Now, do we have any questions? Everything good? Everybody knows what you are supposed to do? Yeah? For the assignment? Good? Okay, so my advice about the assignment, don't freak out about it, let's take it one step at a time, make sure that you plan things, that you kind of set some time aside, especially with other assignments, it's not just my module, there's lots of other modules that you have to do stuff for as well. So make sure that you put that aside, don't panic about it, don't freak out about it, and use the thing between your ears. That's sort of what this assignment is about. It's really about understanding what we talked about in the module, but then transferring it and applying it. And in practical terms, let me reiterate it, respond to each of the 12 subtasks, because you saw how I actually have columns, for each one you get points at the end of the day. And then, afterwards I can really tell you, listen, this is where you lost the points, right? Or this is where you got full points in a way. So I really have that in detail at the end of the day. But think about it from my point of view. I want to give you points, but also give me something where I can actually give you the points for. Okay. Brilliant. So guys, this is it from my side then. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the class. I had lots of fun with this. I hope you can see that. It's a module that I like, but I also like to do some crazy shit once in a while. So there we go. So I wish you all the best for the assignment. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, but make sure that you submit it by I'm not going to miss the 9 a.m. That's one good thing about being in Central European time zone right now. It's actually 10 o'clock over here. It's an hour later over here. But you can't get it all. But now you have I have a sucky internet connection. Anyway, so I wish you all the best. I hope you kind of get to enjoy a nice Christmas, that you have a break wherever you are, however we are. This is completely different. This is really challenging. There's no textbook for this. So stay healthy, stay safe, and all the best for the assignment, but also for all the other modules, that whatever you do later on at UCD or in your life, who knows, maybe we see each other, maybe we don't. So take care and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Holy shit.